check in with Malik Monk together, courtesy of our good friend and James's partner over at the Kings Beat, Sean Cunningham. Before we talk to James here, let's check in with Malik.
You have obviously a few days off here for practice. Just any areas of need for this team or areas of focus on these next few days?
Sense of urgency on the defensive end. That's about it. Everything else will come easy once we get that down.
Do you feel like this past week or so, did it feel like any other week, or were there some emotional games that you guys kind of went through?
This season tournament feels like a playoff game. So yeah, them emotional losses and wins too. So, but I wouldn't say it felt like any other week because it hasn't been an in-season tournament before. So it's been a little different. But we got practice now, so we get to watch our mistakes and see what we got to do.
In a way, is that kind of like a cleanse from that moment and just move in and kind of get back into routine of making it feel like a normal season?
Yes and no, because I think that the tournament's going to be around, though, so we got to get used to it. But, yeah, it's time to get back on track.
I had you guys been talking about, the ultimate goal, the postseason and the playoff next year, too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And now we're closer to that. Like I said, we just need a little bit more sense of urgency on the defensive end, and we'll figure it out.
Mike has been saying you guys haven't been sprinting to the corners as consistently and quick this year. Like, what have you kind of been seeing with that, and maybe the reason?
I really don't know the reason, man. I can't speak for everybody else. So we'll be sending on film. We be close to the corner. We just stopped short. So it's not really just any more something we could do more or less. We just got to get an effort to get back to the corner.
And do you think more often than not it's the dude that gets the board that, like, they just want to be pushing?
Yes and no sometimes. Because I push the ball up. Fox push the balls up. Domas push the ball up. But sometimes I dribble the ball, Fox dribble the ball, and Domas dribble the ball. So it just depends on the game and the field. But we got to get better at that, of course.
Let's stop right there. Malik talks a little bit more. You can check that out on our man Sean Cunningham's page as we welcome in our good friend James Ham, Kings Insider from the Insiders.
Hammer
10 to 12 here.
Sound like people were fighting. What was going on in the background?
I believe it was a spirited practice there. See now you get a sense of what we hear when we put on your guys' videos. It's like all of the commotion going on in the background. But Malik talked about the sense of urgency on the defensive end. Is it as simple, not simple, but is that the number one identifying thing for this team that they've got to work on, is a sense of urgency on the defensive end?
Yeah, I think it is. But like at the end of the day, like you have to win games. So however it is, you have to win games. Like you got to figure that out. I think we're still searching a little bit for an identity with this team. They've been good offensively, but not great. They've been a little all over the board, like big losses, big wins, not a lot of close games. And at the end of the day, like you could say defensive, whatever. Like this team is never. I don't think until they make a roster change or two, they're never going to be great defensively. It's just, can they be good enough? And they've got to be good enough with their offense not playing all that well. So, yeah, it's one of those catch-22s that Mike Brown is stuck in. He's got to figure out how to, make this team better on both ends of the court at this point, where last year he just had to make the team better on one end of the court, which I think may have been easier. But right now, the offense isn't clicking on all cylinders, and neither is the defense.
He said something that Malik said something that it was interesting to hear him say, because I felt the same way a little bit after the game on Monday. He said now that the in-season tournament, he didn't have nothing bad to say about it, but he's like, now that it's over, we can get back to the regular season, like basketball. And that's what I felt too. I wanted them to advance and go to the semifinals and all this other stuff, go to Vegas. But there was a part of me that was like, all right, now we got that out the way. Now we can get back to being the best regular season team that they could be. Do you think that's the feeling the whole team has, the whole organization has as well? It's not that it's a bad thing, like it was a hindrance or something that was annoying, but all right, that's over. Now we can focus again.
Yeah, I found it interesting that like Monday night, the way that they kind of reacted. Is that when it was? It was Monday night, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, how they were down, they were bummed out, not because they lost a game, because they got bounced out of the tournament. I mean, it's part of the same thing. Losing a game is one thing, but you could also tell that they were bummed out about getting bounced out of the tournament. And even Domas talked about it, like just how much fun it would have been to have a break and go to Vegas in the middle of the season and
Mm.
go play against really high level competition. So I think there is a little bit of you can't have a hangover here. You got to get right back out, and you've got to start winning games again. And it doesn't get easy. I mean, you're playing a really good Phoenix Suns team that really got just completely jobbed. It looked like. I don't care what the 2-minute report says. Like I don't understand any of what's
It
happening
was
there.
pinned against his leg, James. The ball was pinned against his leg.
Erroneous. That's just not the facts. Like,
It's really not.
how can you watch the video, and how can the league put out a video, put out a statement, which I think there's a video attached, like
Yeah,
that
at least
says
doctor the video.
something different,
At
like
least like pause it or something. To where
glue the ball to his leg. Like,
it was
see, it was
ridiculous.
there. Yeah, I thought it was ridiculous. I also I didn't know that there is no transition take fouls in the final 2 minutes of a game. I don't think I've ever heard that rule, because the Devin Booker play right before the debacle of a turnover, like there was a clear take foul by Cam Reddish. And like I don't understand why would there possibly not be, why you can't do take fouls, call a take foul in the final 2 minutes of a game. Anyway, maybe I just don't know the rule book well enough, and that one just they snuck in there. I will say this: I thought that the officiating in the end season tournament was horrific in almost every game that I watched, and I think it's a blight on the league that they wanted to put together this incredible tournament that turned out so incredibly well, and everyone's having a great time, and you got officials that shouldn't be calling games out there, deciding a good portion of what happens. And so that's, again, I hate to bash on the officials, but like be better and and use better officials. Like at the end of the day, use better officials. Like I don't know, Tony Brothers seems like a perfectly nice man, but like what does he call? Like how
He's a
many
horrible
phantom
public
calls?
speaker, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, how many public? I mean, how many just bad like mistakes like in front of everyone does he get? And that it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Kenny,
We gotta, these refs, they need to be a whole lot better as a whole. I heard you guys talking earlier, talking about Scott Foster. Scott Ross, he's a terrible ref. Because the things that you say, like, he's a good ref, but he just, he's got a short temper. That's part of being a good ref, like being able to manage your emotions as a referee in those situations and not fly off at the handle.
yeah.
I think he's a terrible ref. It's
Imagine-
always about Scott Foster.
I think like you're right. Like Scott Foster, he gets to play in his own world, and the same thing. Like it's the old Joey Crawford thing. Like, hey, dude, we didn't come here to watch you like basically turn into Leslie Nielsen from The Naked Gun calling a strike three. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's just ridiculous. What we watch from him is just it's crazy. But now Scott Foster. I mean, there was a game where he threw DeMarcus Cousins out at halftime. Like, what is going on? And so I think that that's part of it. Like a lot of the old school, like let these guys have big personalities type thing. It needs to go. It needs to be like as straight up as possible. And I think Devin Booker said it best. Like we're not asking for favoritism. We just want it equal. We just want it fair. And to me, that's like the Kings might as well put that on a shirt. Like, because that's what they've been asking for forever. They're not asking for favoritism, but if you know DeMarcus Cousins basically is running through traffic and getting smashed by everybody all the way to the basket and doesn't get a foul call, and then on the other end he has a hand on a hip on Nikola Jokic on a fall away jumper from 18 feet, and the dude flops and you don't call it, and then you don't call the flop, or you don't call the flop on Draymond Green when he lays there on the ground. Like, what are we doing here? There's a rule book in place. You can't check to see if Sasha Vezenkov flopped on one end and then have a dramatic death scene on the other,
No, it
Oscar
was
worthy.
tragic. It was
It
tragic.
was tragic. I mean, just like ridiculous flopping on the other end, or even the Chris Paul stuff. Like, it's not like they don't see the same thing that De'Aaron Fox sees, or that everyone sees at home. Like, if he flops, go look at it. That's what the replay is for. You have that opportunity to, we just learned they have that opportunity with the Sasha thing. You can go look and see if somebody flops. So again, get the call right. And not only that, but don't call 6 fouls in the final 2 minutes of a game to even up the foul sheet. Don't do it. It's so disingenuous. Like, we see it all the time. Oh, look, the Kings and whoever have the same amount of free throws on the game. Yes, because the Kings were up by 8 and they just started calling whatever fouls. And so at the end of the day, it looks even. It wasn't even. The whole game wasn't even. And so I just feel like, again, the officiating it has to improve at some point.
Remember when Scott Foster lost it on Scotty Barnes, I think it was. Remember last year? Scotty Barnes said something like, "Hey, what, you got money on the game or something?" And
Oh,
Scott lost it. Just
lost it.
absolutely lost it. I said, "What's wrong with this maniac?"
Touched a nerve. I'm just
Yeah.
thankful that Draymond was able to recover from the death that he suffered at the Golden One Center just mere seconds later and get back to playing defense as his coach was telling him to do.
It was
I
like
was
20 seconds later. Yeah, he laid there for a
He
while.
did lay there for a while, but then he popped back up like, like he was hulking up, like Hulk Hogan back in the 80s. He popped
yeah.
up and started shaking his head and, "You, brother," and then went down and then yelled some more and argued with the referee some more.
I would have liked to have seen like Colby Jones like poke him with a stick. Like, "Are you okay, man? You still alive? You still like, what is happening?
Hey,
Somebody
Draymond gone. Hey, someone get Draymond some help.
yeah. Someone run out on the floor and stop the action. He's
The
down.
The memes
Yeah.
following that were absolutely
Epic.
extraordinary.
Epic.
Yeah.
Just extraordinary. What did you think of Monday's game? Kenny and I do not see this game at all the same. What was your impression of that outing against the Pelicans?
Like, very, very seldom do I like look at a game and want to put like a huge amount of onus on one player. But there was like a 3-minute stretch from De'Aaron Fox in the late first quarter that it could not have gone worse.
Yeah.
Like, and to go from up 15 to up 2 in the matter of a couple of minutes, and have, basically one player have 4 turnovers and like 2 or 3 missed shots, like, was really, really tough to watch. And it was almost like Mike Brown needed to call a timeout and put Domantas Sabonis back in to level it out, but before the end of the first quarter. But I think you lost it right there. You had all the momentum. You were shooting really well. You're hitting all your shots, and then they had like I think it was 5 turnovers in a row. And like, for him to come out of the first quarter with, like, well, he had 4 turnovers, but I can't remember what the shooting number was. It wasn't good. And sure, he played great in the second half, and he tried to bring it back, and he did his best. But at the same time, I think that game, like a couple others this season, just shines a glaring like spotlight on what's missing from this team, and you can't hide from it. We've talked about it forever. I've said it so many times on here. They have to have more length and athleticism at the 3 and the 4, and not just length. They have to be ball players. They have to be guys who can step on the court and you can trust for major minutes to play the game, the way you need it to be played. Because if not, Mike Brown can talk about defense all he wants. You just don't have defensive players, and you can get better. You can play together. You can, you can grow organically a little bit on the defensive end. But at the end of the day, if you don't have defensive players, you're not going to be a great defensive team. And so I think that game in particular, just like, okay, What are you going to do if you're in a 7-game series against this team? I tell you what the answer is. You're going to lose. So that's it. Like, you can't walk into a 7-game series against the Pelicans and expect to win. Are you going to do it in the first round, or are you going to do it in the second round? When are you going to lose to them? Because if they're in the playoffs and you're in the playoffs and you run into each other, you don't have the pieces in place to beat that team. Maybe you beat them once, maybe you beat them twice, but in a 7-game series, I don't think they're a better team than the Kings. I think they're a better matchup against the Kings, and the Kings don't have an answer. And so, like, you're gonna have to go address whatever it is that's wrong there and figure it out.
Oh, okay. So I mean, what does that look like? Like that's here we're here again. That's getting a starter out of there.
Yeah.
Like that's what that is. That's not. The way I hear that, that's not get a better Kessler Edwards. That's getting one of the starters out of there. And it ain't Fox, it ain't Sabonis, it ain't Keegan. So what does that look like?
Well, it just depends on who you want to be, doesn't it? Like, if you want to be a good playoff team, this team is a good playoff team. They can make the playoffs. They can win 50 games. Do you want to be a championship contender, which is what they keep saying? Then you need to make changes. And you're right. It's got to be a starter, or a really high level, rotational player. They can't play on the fringe. Like Kyle and I talked about this on the Insiders. Like, it's not to be, well, maybe it was on a commercial break, not to be disrespectful to like Chris Duarte, but Duarte is playing on the fringe when it comes to improving your roster. We saw it the first year with Monty McNair when he chose not to bring Bogdan Bogdanovic back, and he signed, what was it, Glenn Robinson III and Hassan Whiteside as his only free agent. That's not even playing on the fringe. That's just like you're not competing. But we saw 2 summers ago he made a bunch of additions. This offseason, there wasn't as many, and what the additions that he did were, again, like a 35-year-old backup center, a possible maybe wing in Chris Duarte. Like, outside of that, a second round pick in Colby Jones, and then you brought Sasha Vezenkov over from overseas. Like, you knew what your needs were, and you didn't address them. And it's not like we're telling anybody, like, we're making something up about what their needs were, or we're like not able to see the vision. Like, what the needs are. Everyone knows what the needs are. And the Pelicans just showed you once again what your needs are. Like, you can't stop Brandon Ingram. You can't stop Zion Williamson. You can't stop Herb Jones. Like, you can't stop that guy. And that's a problem.
The breakdown of the offseason feels a little too simplistic to me, though. Like, they didn't go address their needs. Sure, I'm confident they tried. I mean, we know for a fact they at least tried on one in Toronto. I don't know if they tried on both of them in Toronto, but we know that they tried on one.
Yeah.
And no one's been able to crack that brick wall yet. So, if you put yourself in a position, sorry, Casey, if you put yourself in a position to make a move later, maybe that is the move that you had to make this offseason, is to make sure, look, what we want isn't there, but we can't handcuff ourselves just to do something.
And I think that's the fair, logical outlook. The only thing I was going to add was the only thing they could have done this offseason, to me, literally, the only thing they could have done was they could have went and got Dillon Brooks. That's it. And if you're offering Dillon Brooks what you offered Harrison, and Houston comes with their offer, you're probably not getting him either. And I don't know if people want to pay $80 million for Dillon Brooks. But that's the only move. It's not like there was a bunch of moves to make out there, and they just passed on them to stand pat. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, Ham. I'm just saying, like, there was only one move they could have made, and it was Dillon Brooks.
Yeah, but I mean, we saw this same exact thing at the trade deadline. And sure, they won a bunch of games afterwards, and so we forgot about the fact that they traded, nothing to get Kessler Edwards and like 1 or 2 second-round picks. Like, that's all they did. And so you're still looking at this and saying, okay, you know you're a couple of pieces away. And we, again, get back to the point that I was making. You're not a fringe piece away. You're not a second, third string center. You're not a, potential, a guy who played, a handful of games last year because of injury and who's coming into his third year. And again, I'm not like throwing shade at these people, at these players, but even when you chose to bring back Trey Lyles, which I think was a great move, and you chose to bring in Sasha Vezenkov, sure, okay, I don't mind that move either. But the problem is that you just eliminated any minutes for any type of player that could actually fill the need that you have. And so, were there other players? I'm sure that there were other players outside of the players that we've seen that got traded or that signed somewhere. But you got to go back to the trade deadline because the same exact thing. And it's just like they still have a bucket list of things that they need to go and take care of, a punch list. And it's not that. I mean, maybe it is difficult. Maybe they don't have the assets. Maybe someone doesn't want to trade with them, but you still have to find that player.
Is Harrison harder to trade now? Or
No.
is the contract affordable enough to where it's not that? And I'm not advocating for trading Harrison Barnes. I'm posing a question about his contract.
Yeah. Okay, so his contract is tradable. I mean, it's like 12 and a half, 13% of the salary cap. That's not that bad, right? So for some people it might look like a huge contract. You got to remember the salary cap is up to like $144 million. It's ridiculously high. So for him to make 17, 18, 19 million over the next 3 years, no, it's not prohibitive. And the other thing I would say is I don't think like people want to heap like their frustrations on Harrison. And a lot of people think that I sit here and protect Harrison or that I try to make excuses for him. I'm just gonna tell you, like, there are a lot of teams in the NBA that would love to have a Harrison Barnes. And the problem is the way the Kings are currently built, he might not work for the Kings. But there are other teams that have the type of players around him that would work perfectly fine. And he would thrive in that situation.
Yeah, but who? Like the thing I can't figure out is like if we look at Toronto, for example, why would Toronto want Harrison Barnes? Because if Toronto's moving on from OG and Siakam, why would they want Harrison Barnes around for 3 years?
I was just gonna say another one I was thinking about on the way in today is how can we get PJ Washington? Why would Charlotte want Harrison Barnes?
Well, those are two examples. So first of all, I'll take Toronto on. I don't think that Toronto intends to be bad forever. And Toronto is not a let's reboot. They're
Mhm.
a let's build around Scotty Barnes, who's younger, but that doesn't mean that you're just going to throw away the next 5 seasons and start over. So I could easily see a team like that saying, "Okay, why would we trade for Harrison Barnes? We're going to trade for him because he's under contract for 2 years, and we're probably going to lose either or both OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam in the offseason when they're unrestricted free agents. So at least you have a player for 2 years. And on top of that, you have to spend money in the NBA. It's not like you can just do it like bum Fisher does for the A's, where you just don't spend money. Like, you actually have to be within 10% of the salary cap, or you have to give that money to your players. You have to like distribute it however you want, but distribute it to your players. So yeah, I don't know. There's going to be a place where Harrison Barnes makes sense. I would agree with you. Charlotte probably doesn't make sense because Charlotte's kind of starting over, but that's where 3-team trades and everything else come in because there are teams out there. Again, like Philadelphia has been interested in Harrison Barnes in the past. I'd have a hard time believing that they wouldn't be interested in him again. And that's because they have other players on their roster that can disguise some of the things that your struggles here. And so that's all I'm saying. Like Harrison Barnes looks different on like 28, 29 other teams. He looks totally different. It just depends on whether that team has the pieces to go around him that can actually support what he does and what he doesn't do. And that goes for any player. It goes for Kevin Huerter. It goes for,
Probably goes for
again,
Davion Mitchell.
Domantas Sabonis. Like, it goes for Domantas Sabonis, too. There are teams that, like, if you put again, a Jaren Jackson Jr. next to Domantas Sabonis. Oh, that would be like incredible. Like you could really, really take like that's a type of player that would the long, athletic, shot blocking, shooting, stretch 3-4. I mean 4-5. Jabari Smith Jr. Like he's young, but you can see where down the road that's who he's going to be. Those are the types of players that I think would really fit next to him. And it's what they tried to do in Indiana with Miles Turner, and they just never put a really good team around them.
Okay. I have a lot more questions. They might not even be worth addressing right now as pertains to Harrison Barnes, because I feel like the discourse after this Pelicans loss has been like a little bit extreme. James, I want to get your opinion on that. We'll come back. We'll talk much more Kings basketball with the insider from the insiders. Our man James Ham here with Dealing with KC on Sacramento Sports Leader ESPN 1320. Chat's right. We need Marvin back.
Yeah, counter to his name, Tom too witty. I don't think that's not really witty, bro. Sorry, Tom. Yeah, so securing the beam. Yeah, Jalen Smith, Isaiah Jackson. Like it's funny, the Indiana Pacers once again have a bunch of players that would make a lot of sense for the Sacramento Kings. And hey, if you don't think Harrison Barnes could help the Indiana Pacers, yes, he could. And if you don't think he has an advocate or two there already, but you put a shot blocker, you put defensive-minded players around Harrison Barnes, or you even ask Harrison Barnes to, hey, we don't need you to be a fifth scorer. We need you to be a fourth, or maybe like a third and a half. I think he can still do that. It's just like in Sacramento, that's not who he is. What's going on, Kenny?
Not much, man. Just responding to this email.
Oh.
A little email action.
I should probably check my email. What's going on, Chatty House? Jacob, you can't go after Jonathan Isaac. I think just making a phone call could injure him. Like, he's a talented player. Reminds me of Andre Kirilenko. Just really, really, like, he can do a lot of things, but that dude is so beat up. You can't make that. And he makes money.
Friends don't let other friends do hypothetical moves for Jonathan Isaac.
That's right. Yeah, I totally agree. It's like Ben Simmons. Like, would you trade for Ben Simmons? The answer is no.
That poor guy, his back might not ever heal.
No.
He just needs to take his money and ride off into the sunset.
Yes, Ryan, I do. I mean, maybe not, just because it's, maybe you don't find the right taker or you don't find the right deal or whatever. But I think if there is a package put together by the Sacramento Kings in the coming months, he would probably be included. I think he's once again out of the rotation. I mean, he didn't play this last game, right?
No.
He was sick the game before. But yeah, and you're talking about a $5 million player. That's kind of a big number for, like, I don't think it's big to trade, but when you're trying to piece together a package to move for something, you put his contract with Harrison Barnes, and all of a sudden you can afford I don't know, what is that? Let me do some quick math.
You said what was the numbers?
If you took Harrison Barnes and Davion Mitchell, that's $22 million.
Yeah.
That means you can go up to a $27.5 million player. And then if you throw in a $2 million Kessler Edwards or something. I'm just like spitballing to like make a point. All of a sudden, you could afford a $30 million player in trade.
Yeah, it was up like this. So when he was messing with the actual like
Oh,
HDMI cords, something made it just glitch and just took it off the air. Okay.
I didn't do it.
Obviously, it happened. But God,
I was
that
like,
seems
it's
impossible to me. But okay.
Oh,
Is this
we're
you
back.
right here?
Huh?
I was like, did you write that right there?
Yeah. Oh, we're back. Oh, sorry. I'm calling Cap, but I can't. Like, I was just giving some devastating news, and I'm just calling Cap on.
Oh man,
Maybe I'm not cut out for this game.
no, you're a Hall of Famer, bro.
No. And the way y'all were acting about LA Knight earlier, it's calling my champion LA
Now-
Knight. It's gonna be Casey and Jesse tomorrow live at Sky River Casino.
Now here's the thing about that. Well, I don't know about Jesse. I can't speak for him. You're the only one that don't like LA Knight. I like LA Knight.
I don't like him at all.
I like
He's-
making fun of LA Knight with you guys.
They said I did something that took KSFM off the air yesterday, and I don't believe it.
When?
I absolutely don't believe it.
We didn't get a thing.
No, not that. No, when we were gone, like
Oh.
when we left, they said I left this up, and I absolutely don't believe it. I absolutely do not believe that at all.
Wait, how would
They
that work? So, like, there wouldn't have to be like music playing stuff. Like,
No, he said something glitched. It doesn't matter. It's a
It
long
was probably
story.
the same person that keeps moving his TV.
Well, it was Seth. Seth must be moving it. I don't know what's going on.
No, it wasn't. Who's it? Is it Marcos? Is that his name?
Mhm.
Yeah. He was in the studio this morning doing a bunch of work under the table
Oh.
before we went on.
Okay.
this is who moved the Christmas tree all over again.
I'm still
And
calling.
then he
Cap
moved.
I'm calling Cap on all of this. I don't believe that happened. I refuse to believe I left the studio last night with these two screens up and didn't notice. Calling Cap.
Well, that doesn't make sense that no audio would play either, though, because if the board's not live, it should be automated.
Well, yeah, it is automated. I don't know how. I don't know. I'm just calling Cap on. They lying on me, Chad.
I'm on your side, D-Lo.
I'm just telling y'all something's off.
Mm.
And hey, I'm telling Complex. I'm calling Cap on all this.
I agree with Miguel. It was Kimberly.
It absolutely
That's
was.
facts.
It was
Kimberly
Kimberly.
came in here and she sabotaged me. That's what happened. She sabotaged me. Big thanks to James Ham and our friends at Jiffy Lube, because we're giving one of the insiders PlayStations away, PS5, tomorrow at Sky River Casino. So come through, see us, watch the show live. We're going to be doing the show live from 32 Brew Street tomorrow. The stream, you'll see us out there if you can't make it, but we'd love to see you. You can only win the PS5 and the game if you're out there. I love these hashtags. Keep them going. Hashtag justice for D-Lo. Hashtag free D-Lo. That's it. Like I'm just cut. Hashtag Leezy did it. I'm fine
that's
with
right.
all of
Yeah,
this.
Leezy.
Throw anybody under the bus because
Leezy catches
I
things.
know I did not leave yesterday with these screens up. Giving these
They weren't-
subliminal
hey.
messages in the meeting like it
believe
was
it.
me that did it.
I believe
They
it.
weren't up this morning when I got there. They weren't, because I whatever that program is, I had to start it like I always do, which that's the only thing I do. I don't
You
touch.
know,
Can't lie, they're
James
doing you
doesn't
dirty,
touch
bro.
buttons.
I think they are.
They're doing you so
I think-
dirty.
believe me, at 3:55, everybody gonna hear me.
Because you leave
Everybody
you,
gonna hear me.
you leave the screens up. That don't mean nothing. I can leave the screens up in here. It's still gonna play because the board's not hot.
Yep, they're gonna hear my voice. They're gonna hear my voice.
I'll
in
be your
20
lawyer,
minutes.
bro. Don't even worry about it.
They're gonna hear my voice in 20 minutes. I'm gonna tell you that
About to
right now.
go down.
This is
Um,
amazing.
James, I'm probably overreacting right now to this piece of news I just got. And I think a lot of Kings fans were overreacting to the loss to the New Orleans Pelicans. What do you think caused that? Is it the 3 losses to the Pelicans? Is it the loss, is it the loss in the in-season tournament? Is it the fact now that only one home team lost? And it was us. Is
Okay.
it Pacers making it? Like what is it?
No, I'm going to say that there was a lot of excitement. For some reason, everyone thought that whatever happened in New Orleans was flukish, which I don't understand. The Kings were favored by 3.5. I'm not sure why. They got beat up by this team twice before. And we can say, oh, like the second game was better. Okay. Still lost. And they still weren't the dominant team. The other team was. So I don't know that I wouldn't overreact about one game because I still, like I just said earlier, I think this is a 50-win team plus. And as they're currently constructed, and they're dabbling with a lot of things, whether it's on the defensive end, whether it's trying to get oppositions in isolation on the other side, on the offensive end of the court. Like, this is what good teams do. They try things during the season. Some things work, some things don't, but some things make you much, much better 3 months from now than you are today because you work something into your system. So I'm not overly concerned about that. What I am overly concerned about is that you just faced a team that you could face in the playoffs, and they're just better than you.
Mm.
And you don't have a way to get through them. And, like, again, in a 7-game series, I taking the Pelicans. So you got to figure that out. And I think that that's something that, there's a lot of excitement for this. So why are the fans like going crazy? Why is everyone calling for Harrison Barnes' head? Like, again, I think a lot of that is overreaction. It was a loss, but it felt like more because it's an in-season tournament loss, and Kings don't get to go to Vegas, and a bunch of writers don't get to go to Vegas. It had planned on going to Vegas, so maybe the like crying wolf thing is happening at this point. But like overall, this is the same team they were last week, and to be honest, it's a very inconsistent version of what they were last year, but with potential to be better because they are trying to learn the game and be better for the long haul and for the playoffs. And like I bring up, taking advantage of an opposition, of getting switches so you can have a mismatch against a player. The Kings didn't have that in their arsenal at all last year, and it's something that they're trying to install right now. And it's slowing things down. It might gum up things, but just think of how many times you remember Steph Curry running by Keegan Murray and Kevin Herter to the basket last year in the playoffs. And that's what the Kings are trying to put into place. That instead of Steph Curry doing that, it's De'Aaron Fox running right by somebody, or it's Malik Monk getting a switch onto, name that player that you're going to face, and trying to get past him. That's kind of what they're doing. So they're learning on the fly, and sometimes there's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be some setbacks, but overall, I think this is still a really good team, and I don't think people should be panicking. You should just understand that, like, you have holes in your roster that you need to fill, and they're still there. And I think that was a big reminder that there are holes that have to be filled if you think you're going to reach the ultimate heights. And if it's okay if you don't, because you're in year 2, but at some point you're going to have to address those things.
I don't know, man. I kind of feel like sometimes people treat the NBA the way they treat the NFL. And you look at one game and they make sweeping proclamations about this team. They didn't play well on Monday. They didn't play well. That doesn't necessarily mean that's who they are right now. Just like when the game 2 days before that, they played a great game against Denver. Great game against Denver. Week before that, they had the number 1 seed get their first loss at home in Minnesota. So they're a little inconsistent right now with how they play. But like I said, yesterday was a lot. Yesterday was just, sky was falling. I was like, I don't think we're going there with this team. They're a team that 18, 19 games into the season, they're trying to find their footing. And aside from Boston, Milwaukee, Minnesota, everybody in the league is trying to find their footing.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I'd also just point out, like, they're over 500. While they're trying to figure it out, they're 11-8. And that's a good thing. Like, you'd rather them try to figure things out. I would just say that where they just look way different than last year. The resiliency of last season is something that we talked about all year long. Like, this team just, they never got down. They bounced back anytime they had a tough loss. They won games that you didn't think that they would even have a chance in on, second nights of a back-to-back and stuff. They don't have that resiliency yet to this roster, to this year's version of And they need to find that because there is a big difference. Last year, they did not lose games like they lose the games this year. They've lost a couple of games by a ton where they weren't competitive. And you're looking around like, why is this team not competitive? We did not see that all too often last year. Maybe, a couple of times the entire season. We're already at like 5 games that I thought that they weren't really all that competitive in. And that's not something we saw last year.
You feel like things are a little off?
I don't know. Like, not really. I think you just haven't had a lot of like the Keegan Murray injury situation. Like, it really does hurt this team because you don't have someone else like him to fill that void, and that's a problem. And you got to go small, or you've got to go big. You don't really have like that in between player, and so I think that is a problem. And again, I think a lot of this is going to come back to matchup base. Like overall, outside of De'Aaron Fox, I don't think anyone has been like consistently De'Aaron Fox and I would say probably Malik. Like no one has been like consistently excellent. And I think, Kevin Herter had a really rough like first 4 games of the season. He's only like peppered in a couple of really bad games since then. But Sabonis has had off nights. Clearly Harrison Barnes, like I don't know what to make of what happens to him on a nightly basis, just because he's not part of the game plan. So, and I'd even point that was like a really, really weird situation during post game on Monday with Mike Brown. So Mike Brown brought up, like in pregame, he brought up about how everybody has a role and how they had every player had a say in their role. He was talking about Malik Monk and he had to write down and then he had to tell the team what his role was. And like he made a big deal out of this thing. It's part of the all in thing, right? And then we get to post game and he gets asked about Harrison Barnes and he's like, yeah, we don't really know what his role is. And I'm like, wait, what? Like Harrison didn't have to go stand up in front of the team and explain what his role is and all this. Like you're telling us now that you don't know what his role is and that the coaching staff is still working on his role. And I thought that was like a weird situation because like clearly Mike hadn't game planned for a Harrison Barnes conversation after that loss.
That was back to me. I think it was Matt and Jake were grilling Mike over Harrison Barnes.
Yeah.
To follow up on Jake's question, I want to eviscerate Harrison here too. And then that's where we got that we don't run plays and all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, but that may be a coach looking out for his player. Hell, I don't know if Harrison knows what his role is. I don't know if anybody knows what Harrison's role is. He looks different. Like we're reacting to this game, and this is the truly crappy part about all of this. Harrison had 3-4 good games in a row, and it just barely got a, glitch of a mention in, a 6-hour ESPN broadcast. But the second, things look bad, the second he puts up 4, oh, he's a first segment mention. Can't have that. Can't have that. It's like his 11, 12, 13, 14. It's just steady and kind of inconspicuous. At 4, boy, that 4 is loud.
The thing, real quick, the thing I'll say about that, I know for me, and I was just going to stall him out yesterday anyway, because of what you said, he's been playing fine, the last few games. And he had a bad game on Monday, but it's always kind of my thing with Harrison. Can't give me nothing, right? If you give me 4 points and you're playing good defense and you're like, man, locking up and doing all this other stuff and your main focus is on the defensive end and it only leads to 4 points, so be it. If you give me 4 points and you come away with 9 rebounds, cool. But you can't give me 4 points, 4 rebounds, 1 of 3, not really doing anything on the defensive end. Like you can't, at this point, the frustration sometimes is like, man, Kevin Herter out here out rebounding you. Kevin Herter, shooting guard, going out there and getting big time rebounds. On Saturday, he was in there getting big time rebounds. I just need him to do something. That's all. There's no one thing specifically, but just don't be invisible out there.
I get what you're saying, but I also like how many times do you remember what PJ Tucker did in a game. You know, like you don't. Or Robert Covington. Like on occasion they have a big block or they have a big bucket, but that's when you're a fifth starter on a really good offensive team, when you're the number 5 option on the offensive end and Mike Brown keeps saying they don't run plays for you. I don't know. I'll tell you, like not this week, but the week before in my week in review, Harrison Barnes was player of the week. He averaged like 18.7 points per game. Like he shot outlandish from 3. The second Keegan Murray steps on the court, Harrison Barnes drops back a step in the pecking order, and he's not getting a lot. And like, don't forget that De'Aaron Fox, in order to average 30 points a game, he's taking like 22, 23 shots a game. Like that comes out of Harrison Barnes's pay. Like all of these things, like there's no way for everybody on this team to be great every single night, because if they did, then this team would average 150 points a game, and that's not who they are. So again, look at how the Kings' pace has gone down. So there are fewer shots for everybody. Like this is a much slower team than it was last year. They don't look like they're in as good a shape as they were last year, which is something that I think will be addressed as we get deeper into the season. But like, I don't know how you do it on the fly. But overall, I think Barnes is a convenient person to point out. And while he didn't have he didn't score, or he didn't do those things in the last game, like, Zion Williamson finally didn't beat you. Everyone else did. And Harrison Barnes was part of the reason why Zion Williamson didn't have a huge game. So I don't know. Like it's just, I guess it's, what are your expectations for Harrison Barnes? And the fact is he's basically like 3 points less, and you can take those 3 points and look at any one of the other players he's playing with and understand where they're taking those 3 points, especially Fox. Like he's shooting a ton, and that just means there's less shots for other people. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just a reality.
Why do you think the pace is so much slower? Or why is the pace so much slower?
Well, I mean, I think the one stage you didn't have Fox for 5 games, and that killed your pace. Outside of that, like they are trying new things, which slows the pace down, right? They're trying ball reversals. That's something that Mike has been talking about a lot, where he feels like they're only playing on one side of the court, and it makes them predictable. And so he's trying to go back and forth and use both sides of the court, so you're catching guys caught in rotation. So that's one thing. I'd say that the idea of trying to, again, like play matchups and get isolation on players, that slows down as well, because now sometimes it's 3 screens to get you to the player that you want on the player, get your player on the player on the other team that you want, the matchup that you want. So that takes longer. But overall, I mean, like this team doesn't have to run and go crazy all the time. And I would even point to like the Indiana Pacers, who are so much fun right now, right? Like everyone's loving the Indiana Pacers. They're basically the Sacramento Kings, like in the final year of Dave Yeager. Like the structure of basketball, the defensive side of the ball, all of the things that will win you playoff series aren't there. They're just running and putting on a show and playing no defense. And sure, they're fun. And if you're going to be like a marginal or a bad team, like at least be fun. And maybe they'll be better. Like, I don't know. They're catching teams by surprise right now. But teams like that typically peter out in the second half of the season when everyone in the league makes adjustments. They have a couple of injuries because they're running like breakneck speed the whole time, and it all catches up to them. I think, again, the Kings don't have to play with crazy pace. They don't have to be running all the time, but they don't look like they are like in the same type of shape that we saw from last season.
Mary was thinking the same thing I was in the chat. She says, Ham, any comment on the Stockton Kings trading for Stanley Johnson? I think it's a good experiment. Like Stanley Johnson, at least has the cachet of being, he's supposed to be a can't miss NBA guy, has not been that in the NBA. But if he's just out there floating around the G League for free, he's 27 years old. Why not bring him in and see if maybe you can do something with him?
Yeah, I mean, this is the number 8 overall pick in the 2015 NBA draft. I mean, he's got talent, but he averages 6.2 points per game for his career. He's never been able to put it together, and like as a G League player, and like look, if you haven't noticed, they're trying to win the G League championship. I mean, just gonna point it out. The Kings have made like the Stockton Kings have already made like multiple moves. Their goal is to win. It's which that's up to them how they do that. I prefer to use the G League as a development league. They look like they're trying to run up the score on certain team, and they're just trying to like pick up victories. And I say that because he's like the third or fourth, maybe fourth or fifth, like 27, 28-year-old player. Like, I don't know that like, I like Stanley Johnson, like, in 2015, and maybe he develops, maybe he doesn't, but the fact is he didn't, and so I wouldn't, like, count on him being the savior that you need at the small forward position, so Harrison Barnes doesn't have to play 33 minutes a night. That's not what they're doing. They're
Right.
trying to win G League games, which is,
You kind of have a tone to that. Like what like it's like not kind of like it is really apparent. Like what's bothering you about the way the Stockton Kings are going about this?
well, I think it like, the G League should be about developing players, and, I
But
mean
it's also a contest. Like they're keeping records. If it's just about developing players, don't keep records.
well, no, I get what you're saying there, but, like, you're the Kings don't have I guess they have Jalen Slauson. They have, like, one 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", athletic small forward that they're developing at the G League level right now. Like, that just to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if that's gonna be a true development league, which it's supposed to be,
Mhm.
then I would like to see you developing and like, look, Jordan Ford's playing great. That's great. You're developing a backup point guard, and I really like what they did last year with Keon Ellis, forcing him into playing a bunch of point guard. I do think that it's helped him, and I think that Colby Jones going down there, it's gonna help, like, his development, but I would like to see, again, is Scalabiciere gonna make it back to the NBA? And, it won't be with the Kings, that's not who the Kings are. The Kings are a team that has sights on the championship, not on bringing up a, 27-year-old guy to give him another shot in the league. So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with winning at the G League level, but it should be as much about development as anything else, or more about development than anything else in my book. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it doesn't feel that way. Feels like they're trying to win.
Well,
Might
at
be
least we
what they're
know
doing.
James hates winning.
That might
I
be what
do.
they're doing with Stanley Johnson. You know what I mean? Like looking at a guy
Yeah.
like that at 27, and like I said, bringing him into your program and seeing if I mean, Stanley Johnson, I know, like if he hadn't been in the NBA, that would be the guy you're talking about, right? Like if he didn't have this thing of being in the NBA and he was in Europe for 6 years, like, yeah, get this 6'7" guy that's versatile and see if you can develop him. That would be the guy. He just has, I don't want to say a stench, but it's just because he's failed in the NBA that we're looking at it as they're trying to win games.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he failed in Detroit, he failed in New Orleans, he failed in Toronto, he failed in Los Angeles with the Lakers, and he failed in San Antonio.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like if he was in Europe and never even played in the NBA, you'd be looking at him differently.
Maybe, but I have a body of work that tells me that, like, he's not going to be your savior and back up Harrison Barnes.
The guy who didn't make the NBA that's coming from Europe probably isn't going to be your savior, but we would look at him as developing him, right?
Maybe, but like I don't know, like Chima Moneki, sure. Like you brought Chima over as like a 25-year-old and gave him a shot, and it didn't work out, and they went away from him. He went back to Europe. So,
You
yeah,
know what doesn't fail? Our live broadcast at Sky River Casino,
Never.
32
segue.
Grove Street. That's where we will be tomorrow. We hope to see as many of you out there as possible. When you come through the door, check in at the ESPN table and get the code word so you have the opportunity to win one of these PS5s, courtesy of our friends over at Jiffy Lube, and of course our friends over at the Insider. So the